Humanists Take on the World, Episode 5. Crypto, Bitcoin, and Blockchain. Welcome to another episode of Humanists Take on the World. I'm Dustin, and joining me is Lauren.
I think this is only the second time.
Yeah.
Hooray!
Yep. All right, so...
We're about to talk about a lot of stuff I do not understand.
Yep, so hopefully you can...
An alien language.
Yep.
You can dumb it down for everybody.
All right, so... One of the things about the new show is being able to cover... wanted to go a little bit more into various topics of interest.
Tangents.
And...
Train wrecks.
Technology stuff is pretty interesting, and climate and science and all that kind of stuff. And so there will be some of those, but don't worry, it won't be the main focus of the show. It'll just be one of the topics that will sometimes come up.
Like today.
So, I need to start off with some disclosure. Currently, we own 0.00666 Bitcoins.
Yes.
So, we do own some Bitcoin.
We do officially. It is he's just so excited that it hit a 666 mark.
Yep.
He's like, let's do a whole episode on this because we hit 666. We lost down to 666, but that's okay.
And so, the reason for us buying into that was, spending Thanksgiving with my parents and brother, who both my dad and brother had crypto. My brother Scott does a lot of the altcoins, and my dad got some Bitcoin from my...
Yeah, they really talked it up.
Off of a bunch of Bitcoin mining from back in the day with his best friend.
That's key, by the way, back in the day.
Uh-huh. And so then kind of watched and was just waiting for the price to come down a little bit more, and then went ahead and just bought some.
Got impatient.
And yeah, the price has been pretty stagnant. Just been interesting.
Yeah.
Value, buying $300 worth. The value dropping down to, I think, $220 at one point, and then up to almost $315.
Should have waited.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it, though. I get it.
Yeah. So let's get into what all this stuff is. So first off, what's a blockchain?
See, in my brain, I think Legos, and I know that's not right.
So what it is it's basically a database that's in a file that's segregated into blocks that are mathematically tied to each other so that you can't insert new blocks into the database. But, so with Bitcoin, each Bitcoin has a block. But since you can own parts of Bitcoins, that means there's extra pieces that go into the coin, and the transactions get written to the blockchain, but it's all mathematically signed and distributed, so there are potentially thousands or even millions of copies of the blockchain, hopefully all getting updated. And because of cryptographic craziness and math,
it's all about math.
It works out.
I guess it works out. I mean...
Yeah. But one thing...
You just said a bunch of words jumbled together.
And one of the things that's kind of neat with that is, say you're offline for a weekend, and then your server comes back up and connects, it gets all the updates, and it all just propagates across the network just fine because of, all this weird cryptographic math stuff. And computers crunch a lot of numbers to make sure the math is all checks out. And if it all checks out, then it's all good and accepted. If somebody tries to squeeze something into the blockchain that the math doesn't work out, well, then that's rejected and does not get accepted onto the chain by everybody else. So it's weird and interesting, but weird because something created by an anonymous math nerd.
Yeah. I don't get it, but...
Yeah. All right, so then the next thing, how does the mining work? For Bitcoin and most of the others, if not all of them at this point, it's proof of work, which means the goal is for a Bitcoin to be claimed every 10 minutes.
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the network software updates goals every 2 weeks to adapt to the amount of computing power that's being used to mine Bitcoin and set a number. And whoever can basically guess that number within that 10-minute window gets that Bitcoin.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
It's just a guessing game?
So you just keep crunching numbers over and over and over until you finally get the right one.
You brute force it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a result, it started off with you could just run it off of any computer and make money, even off of a really low-powered computer. And then people with money got involved.
Fuckers.
Like when my got involved, he and his friend, who had a pretty successful business, bought some servers, got them all set up to do Bitcoin, and then as the technology advanced, they just kept adding more and more to this office space they rented out to pile in all these servers and
just to compute random numbers, hoping to hit the lottery,
and managed to mine. That's insane.
That's insane. Yeah, that's.
Now, of course, as the interest of people like that has increased, the amount of computing power required keeps going up.
Right, you can't just do it on your home PC anymore.
Because there's the goal of it takes 10 minutes for one to be computed.
Right.
So if the competition goes up, the difficulty goes up to match. And so it started off with CPUs did just fine, and then it went to GPU mining. So your graphics card.
Which is why you can't buy a graphics card anymore.
Well, graphics cards can't cut it anymore.
Oh.
But the graphics card companies are now blaming the chip shortage. So then AMD had the idea of making specialized GPUs that weren't actually graphics cards that could be used for crypto mining and have more of the compute cores and no graphics outputs because it wasn't actually a graphics card.
Okay, so they got in on the game too.
Oh, yeah. And then there's the AIX machines, I think I got that right, that are just made to compute those numbers. That's all they can do. And the general rule of thumb is if you have a good mining rig, in a year and a half, you need a new one.
Oh, you burned through it?
No, it's not good enough anymore.
Oh.
They keep changing the type of hardware. So just getting a new graphics card for your computer doesn't cut it because graphics cards don't do squat now.
No.
Now you need to have a specialized computer that can handle it.
Right.
Well, that works until the next generation of those specialized computers is out, and then you need the next generation of those, and because that's brand new technology, it is growing and adapting quickly. Also, you're competing with people who have entire warehouses full of these servers.
Yeah.
Good luck. There are also pools, so people can join a pool, and then if the pool wins, then everybody gets a piece of the Bitcoin the pool gets. But again, even in those pools, you're competing with people who have entire offices or warehouses filled with servers. Complete data centers just crunching numbers to mine Bitcoin.
It sounds so silly when you put it like that.
Uh-huh. All right, so next up
But a couple people made a lot of money, so everybody's got to get in on it.
Next up is, what's a transaction? Because in Bitcoin, there's transactions. So if you mine a Bitcoin, you have to prove that you did the math right. And it's all done in a way that using cryptographic hashes that your math can be checked out. And using cryptographic hashes is a more efficient way than actually going over all the math, because if the hash works, the hash works.
Rather than doubling the amount of work.
Yeah. For example, doing a hash of a...
What's a hash?
It's a mathematical representation of a file.
Okay.
So you can do a...
Like just a string of numbers
256 hash of this podcast episode's MP3 file.
Okay.
And it is a 256-digit number that if you hash the file and it hasn't been modified, it will still come up with that number. If somebody has inserted ads into it or re-encoded it, then that number won't match because mathematically it'll be different.
Okay.
So hashes end up being a great way to make it easier because you don't have to actually do a bit-by-bit comparison. You run the hash, it doesn't work. So it's crazy with all that, but with the transactions, there are on-chain transactions, which is where you have Bitcoin. For example, when I bought Bitcoin on Coinbase, I then transferred it to the Umbrel I set up, which required creating an invoice on the Umbrel and then paying that invoice from Coinbase. And somebody... Umbrel is a way that you can self-host your own Bitcoin node.
Okay.
I have deleted it because...
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous because to run your own Bitcoin node, you have to have the entire 450 gigabyte blockchain downloaded. That's insane.
Yes. Okay. Most people don't do that.
Most people don't. I was trying it out. And because I heard about it and it seemed interesting, and
how we went over on our internet.
Yes.
Big download.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Downloading the entire Bitcoin blockchain.
The ISP is like nerd.
So when that happened, it took time for it to happen because there had to be kind of core nodes willing to accept that transaction. And you have to wait in line for your transaction to get written into one of the canonical nodes of the Bitcoin network. And there is a fee for doing that because it costs money to run the servers that run those and to do the math to check out that you actually own it.
Who was in charge of all this?
Nobody.
Well, there's a red flag.
It's all open source.
Okay.
So it's distributed, it's open source, there's no owner. It is a network with a bunch of nodes that all cooperate.
Okay.
And it's a distributed system. So once that transaction was accepted on the chain, then it propagated across the Bitcoin node, including to my Umbrel node, my own Bitcoin node, and then I had the money in my wallet.
Now, you just bought a piece of somebody else's mined Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
So people mine
and then sell it.
And then sell it off to poor suckers like you.
Yep, so they can pay their power bills.
So they can pay for another server because theirs is out of date.
Yep. Then there are off-chain transactions. Part of my interest in Bitcoin was this concept called value for value, where you can stream 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, or you can stream amounts of Bitcoin measured in Satoshis, which are 1/100 millionths of a Bitcoin. So a fraction of a penny, but you can stream that to other podcasts through value for value in Podcasting 2.0. And this seemed really interesting. It is really interesting. And so I wanted to play around with that. And
the idea there is that you get paid for every minute that somebody pays you for every minute that they listen to your podcast.
Yeah. So a big part of where the idea there is instead of you pick your 5 favorite shows and you give them money on Patreon and they get all of the money that you give to podcasts, that you could give the same amount of money to all of the podcasts, and spread it out evenly across all the podcasts you listen to. Even though it's not actually evenly, it's per minute, which means shows that go 2 hours a week or end up doubling the amount of episodes they do or doubling the amount of minutes they do end up doubling their income.
Even if it's just filler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would make it so that doing things like truncating silence, like I do, which shortens the episode.
Oh, that'd be bad.
Would cost money.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's some issues there. Doing a completely live, unedited, live to tape, put it out there.
Throw in some ads. There you go.
How that works is off of something called the Lightning Network. which is a way of doing fast transactions that are not on the blockchain. Instead, what happens is two Lightning nodes open up a channel between each other, and then they can exchange Satoshis, or 1/100 millionths of a Bitcoin, with each other back and forth as long as they want until they close the channel, and then it gets written to the blockchain.
Okay.
So it's basically
not waiting in line that whole time.
The basic
idea, the blockchain.
Yeah, the basic idea there would be, analogy there would be, you go to the bar and you open up your tab and you drink, and you don't have to actually pay for each drink as it happens. Once you close the tab, you pay for all of them.
Okay.
And then it gets settled on your bank account.
Okay, that I understand.
Yeah. However, just like opening a tab at the bar with your debit card, or what happens when you swipe a debit card at a gas station, you have to front the money, and then it gets settled on the end. So to open a channel, you have to have more Bitcoin in the channel for liquidity than you will ever receive.
Oh, they're not taking it on credit.
There's no credit there.
Okay.
So you dedicate money, or you dedicate Bitcoin to the channel, and then you can receive more, and you can add that to your liquidity. You can just keep it on the channel, and then the channel can grow, but eventually it has to be settled. Otherwise, you'd be conceivably creating Bitcoin without mining it, and that's not possible.
Right.
So the idea there, it's interesting, but it's important to have those two different, and those two different types of transactions are important because the on-chain transactions are slow and expensive, and the on-chain or off-chain transactions are fast and theoretically cheap. And I say
if you already have the money.
And I say theoretically because that assumes you're not opening your own channel, you're using somebody else's. Everyone who has a channel can charge fees. And basically everybody does. Because if you don't, you better hope you don't have bandwidth limits on your internet connection, because you're going to be processing all of them. Because everybody's going to use the free one. Because you can choose, do you want to go the fastest route or the cheapest route? Most people choose the cheapest route.
Right.
And following the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon rules, theoretically, you want to send money to somebody, to their Lightning wallet. You don't have a channel with that person directly, but 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you probably within 7 hops can get the Satoshis from your wallet to that person's wallet.
But you're paying fees at each node.
And each one will be charging anywhere between 1% and 3% fees for the, yeah.
It would have been cheaper to use a credit card.
Yep. Considering credit cards are, no, a debit card is a 35 cent charge. Credit cards, the merchant pays 1% to 2%. PayPal's
what it is now.
3% transaction fee. Stripe's pretty cheap. It's not even cheaper than Patreon, realistically, because Patreon's about 7% total in fees. And if every single hop is charging between 1% and 3%, then that adds up. And it could easily be a 10 or 15% fee.
Okay. So that kind of falls apart a little bit there.
Yeah. Yeah. So why is this even a thing? In the simplest
Some
terms,
neckbeard got bored.
Yeah, a board geek wanted to make something cool with math. And did.
Mathematical.
It's decentralized. There's no one entity that owns it or controls it. Nobody even knows who the creator actually is. He was anonymous, he operated under a pseudonym, and nobody knows who Satoshi was. And he still hasn't been found.
Mysterious.
Yeah. There has been... The last theory I saw was that it was Jack Dorsey, and it absolutely was not Jack Dorsey.
Right. There's lots of theories out there. A lot of people have come forward and claimed it, and they've basically all been debunked.
Yep. So no one entity owns it. No one can decide they're going to change Bitcoin, and then it's all changed. It's all democratic. If there's going to be a major change in Bitcoin, then 50% of the stake in Bitcoin needs to approve it. We'll get to how that's problematic. Bitcoin was created to be universal. It's not tied to any one nation's fiat currency. Fiat currency being currency that exists because a government says it, as opposed to it's tied to a commodity like gold or silver.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the car.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, fiat.
Makes a lot more sense.
Yes. So fiat currency, some people into cryptocurrency are of the mindset that once the U.S. went off the gold standard, that the U.S. dollar stopped actually having value. That is absurd.
Right, because I could still go buy bread.
Yep. The U.S. dollar has value because people will accept it for goods and services.
Okay.
Gold has value not because of anything intrinsic in it, except for industrial uses. There is intrinsic value in gold because of industrial services. But gold as a currency is only of value when people will accept it for goods and services. Good luck trying to buy beer with gold.
Yeah, right?
That's not acceptable currency, but depending on what you're buying, a $20 bill will probably get you beer if you're in the US, or actually a fair number of countries.
Right.
But anyway, so it's universal. Since it's not tied to any one currency, it can be used theoretically equally in any country without borders or limitations. So it's the one global currency to rule them all.
Okay. Sounds good.
And it's private. Everything on the blockchain is anonymous. Your Bitcoin address is mathematically generated. It's a hash of your private key, and only you know your private key, and nobody can guess what your private key is based on the hash, because you'd have to brute force it.
Right.
And it is really hard to brute force a hash.
You might as well just mine the Bitcoin.
Yeah. Because of that, in theory, every transaction on Bitcoin is anonymous. It's all open, it's all transparent, but it's all anonymous because that address can't be tied directly to you.
Okay.
It's not an account in your name. It is just an address tied to your private key.
Okay.
In theory. So let's look at how this has all worked. As of April 3, 2022, the day of recording, the top 10,000 Bitcoin addresses, or about 0.03%, own about 60% of all Bitcoin. Many of these are some of the earliest miners, and many of these top addresses are owned by people who own multiple of those top addresses.
Right. Those are the ones who, those are the ones that have warehouses and stuff, right? I mean,
some of the top addresses have been dormant since 2014.
Oh. So they mined a bunch early on and just held on to them.
Yep. Or they mined a whole bunch early on, used offline cold storage wallets, and then mined more, and then put it into another cold storage wallet, which is a hardware key that stores your key that you can then lock in a safety deposit box if you want, or wherever.
Just like with real money, the top percenters are hoarding it.
Yes.
Okay.
So realistically,
intrinsically useless.
That top 10,000 addresses are probably owned by even fewer thousands of people.
Okay.
So the top 0.03% is probably even smaller than that.
Yeah.
This means that the remaining 99.97% of Bitcoin addresses own a mere 40% of Bitcoin. Remember what we said about it being decentralized and
democratic.
And democratic. 50% is all that's needed to completely change Bitcoin. 50% is less than 10,000 addresses.
Yeah.
it's probably less than 2,000 people. It could theoretically be a few hundred people who own half and could do whatever they want with it.
Well, they would, because then they lose money, probably.
Probably. And it's decentralized, which also means it's unregulated, which means there are no rules to say what any of that means.
Right.
They literally can do whatever they want. Unless there's an estimated 20% of all Bitcoin that has been lost. One example was somebody who lost at the time $75 million worth of Bitcoin because he threw away the hard drive that had his private key on it.
What a dork. Oh.
And it's estimated that 20% has been lost.
Oh, sure. You lose your key somehow. The computer dies or you die.
If you've got your Bitcoin on your...
It's not like it's an inheritance. You can't pass it on to your kid or anything.
If you've got your Bitcoin on an Umbrel that's running on a Raspberry Pi sitting in your house, and you write your 20 words to seed your private key onto a piece of paper, and then you put that in a safe in your house, and then your house burns down, your Bitcoin is gone.
Right.
It's gone. Granted, you could have it, if it's anywhere non-custodial, meaning you actually have control of it, not somebody else holds your key, then if you write down your secret words and then your house burns down, you don't have Bitcoin anymore.
Right.
Like, that's insane.
It's not very safe.
No.
But, and there was only 20%? I would guess a lot more have been lost.
Now, on the other side, if you have your Bitcoin in a custodial wallet, often at one of the exchanges like Coinbase or the Cash App, you don't have your 20 words, you don't have your private key. They hold that for you, which means if your house burns down, you log into your account and you still have your Bitcoin.
Okay.
Except for they've had data breaches.
Oh.
And billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin has been stolen from exchanges and custodial wallets because of data breaches.
Oops. Yeah, that's not safe either. Well, not 100%. Safer.
Both are less safe than a bank, than a federally insured bank.
Yeah. It's just as risky as stuffing cash under your mattress.
Yeah. Until China banned Bitcoin mining in 2021, just last year, 60 to 70% of all mining was going on in China. China banned it because they have a goal of being carbon neutral. And as they were adding these massive hydropower installations and creating lots of cheap energy, they weren't able to start shutting down coal plants because all these crypto miners
just took advantage
the demand
of it.
up.
Yeah, okay.
So they shut down all the crypto miners in China. Well, that 60 to 70...
They didn't just nationalize it.
They want to get off of fossil fuels.
Yeah. Apparently they take it more seriously than most others.
Yeah. So...
Really surprises me, actually.
It's amazing what happens when the personal will of the leader is all the political will needed to do something.
It's true.
It's a lot harder to do.
If that political leader decided he really wanted to get into Bitcoin, it would be a very different world.
If Elon Musk was the dictator of China, the chairman of the Communist Party of China, then, yeah, they would be damming every single river, using all of the oil, and mining all of the Bitcoin. But fortunately, Elon Musk is just the dictator of his own companies. And soon Mars. Yeah. So since then, most of the mining has moved back to the United States. The main reasons being the U.S. has lots of cheap energy, especially compared to the rest of the world. For example, I've seen reports of energy prices in Britain being somewhere in the ballpark, like recently rising up to somewhere around 70 or 80 pence, or the British equivalent of cents per kilowatt hour. I was listening to Phil Ferguson podcast recently, and he was talking about his electric car and energy in Chicago being around 16, 17 cents a kilowatt hour. Or in Boise, we're at 7.8 cents per kilowatt hour.
Right.
Our utility has the goal of being completely off of coal by 2030 and completely off of carbon by 2040. To do that, they just have to shut down the plant they own that's being run in Nevada and sell their stake in the one in Wyoming.
It really wouldn't be that. I don't know why they are waiting that long.
Because there is no coal power in Idaho.
Right. There's one.
No.
No?
It's not actually in the state of Idaho.
Okay. Just.
Interestingly, the Idaho is getting a bunch of new nuclear plants, but not for Idaho. Oregon is buying little neighborhood nuclear reactors, little breeder reactors, to put in Idaho to power Portland.
Wow. Interstate commerce is weird.
And our big dam on the Boise River, that power all belongs to California.
Yeah.
It's all weird. The grid is weird. But the U.S. has lots of cheap electricity, and of course, that's where the miners are going. It's where it's cheap. Iceland also has a lot of Bitcoin mining because of all the geothermal power there. They have a very, very extensive power capacity and lots of Bitcoin. Granted, it's Iceland, so that's nothing compared to how much is being generated in the U.S. With the universal nature of Bitcoin, you can get around sanctions.
Oh, that's important right now, isn't it?
It knows no national boundaries. Theoretically, if a country wanted to get around sanctions on buying Russian goods, you just do a Bitcoin transaction and call it good.
Yeah.
Transfer your funds that way.
And they are.
In recent years, almost all the big crypto locker systems are hacks that have, shut down entire hospital systems and businesses and oil pipelines in the U.S. Those have all been efforts to get Bitcoin. The Russian and Serbian hackers want Bitcoin as payment. It's anonymous-ish.
Yeah.
So
great for the black market. Better for the gray market.
Yep. Now, as far as the privacy of it, Bitcoin is not anonymous. It is pseudo-anonymous. What that means is everything on the Bitcoin ledger is fully traceable, trackable, and transparent. So every single transaction, that address is there. If you know who owns the address, you can follow the money and you can see where it goes. Because of the concern and the reality of Bitcoin being used for criminal purposes, the U.S. regulators have been cracking down, and most of the exchanges, if not all, are now following the same financial institution know your customer laws, which means to open an account with an exchange or to actually do transactions on it, you have to prove exactly who you are. So that way, when that criminal transaction or the criminal enterprise gets traced back to you, they can say who you are. Absolutely. So it's not that private. There are other cryptocurrencies that are...
It was private. It started out as private, but then the exchanges got...
Well, there are other cryptocurrencies that are designed to be private by design, while Bitcoin was not private by design.
Okay.
It was pseudo-anonymous by design, would be the best way of putting it.
Okay.
And, we already mentioned the fees. The fees can be crazy. When I started out, it was 0.0067 something Bitcoins. And then between fees and then giving a little bit on the Lightning Network to some podcasts trying out value for value, that quickly dropped down to 0.00666 bitcoins.
Right.
So I went from 69 to 666, or from 69 to 666.
Nice.
Yeah. And the fees are a huge factor in that. Like, just initially buying the Bitcoin, Coinbase took 7%, if I remember correctly. And then every transaction since has taken 3 or 4%.
Jesus.
It's like every time you do anything with it, you lose money. And those fees are way higher than anything in the normal, regular financial world. It's insane. All right, so now let's move on to criticisms about cryptocurrency. Now, I know it sounds like we just went through a whole bunch of criticisms, but no, we were just talking about how it actually works. Now let's get into the actual criticisms about it. The first one is the volatility. Bitcoin has risen. It has crashed. There was one crash a couple of years ago where it was right after it topped $20,000 a Bitcoin. It crashed to the point where the Bitcoin network agreed to shut down to stop it from absolutely collapsing. Considering the network operators didn't actually own 50% of Bitcoin, they didn't have the authority to do that, but they did.
Oh, okay.
To keep from losing everything, because it was a mass sell-off. But it has fluctuated like crazy. In the time that we've owned Bitcoin, it went from $43,000 being worth a Bitcoin being worth $43,000 to $37,000 to $42,000 to $29,000 to $46,000. And this is all in hopes that it'll go back up to $67,000 where it was at shortly before we bought in. And it does that in like 6-month cycles where it goes up and then it goes down and then it goes up and then it goes down. And sometimes it's a fundamental like rebasing of where it is. And if you happen to buy right before it jumps up a level, you make a ton of money. But there's nothing to say it's not going to crash.
Right.
Right now, it's worth a lot of money because a bunch of people, Coinbase is spending a lot of money on, Coinbase and the Cash App are spending a lot of money on advertising about it. And there's interest. People are bored.
Freaking Super Bowl ads.
Yeah. That bumps up interest. One of the reasons why I got to 67,000 was Elon Musk buying $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. Well, excuse me, not Elon Musk. Tesla bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin.
Why? Just because he was bored?
It's the future.
Oh my God.
Thanks. Yeah. So next up on the criticisms would be it's insecure. By 2017, data breaches would result in, about 1 million Bitcoins being stolen from exchanges.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's a lot. Considering each Bitcoin at the time was worth about $20,000. Right now, each of those is worth $46,000. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Even my has had Bitcoins stolen from him. Not fractions of Bitcoins, entire Bitcoins.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's as more Bitcoin gets lost, there is a chance that eventually half of all Bitcoin will be lost and no one will be able to control it. At which point the network operators would just take over and ignore the rules, like they did to prevent it from completely collapsing.
Right.
And crime. A recent investigation into it estimated that about 3% of the transactions are criminal activities.
No, that's not nearly as much as I thought it would be.
It'll make more sense in a little bit.
Okay.
So 3% is, that's handling all of these ransomware attacks and human trafficking and drug transactions and arms sales and
okay,
bad stuff. About 80% of all transactions are just people buying and selling on exchanges.
The circle jerk.
So that's 83% so far.
Yeah.
What's left is mostly just people moving stuff off the exchanges onto other wallets and eventually moving them onto a cold wallet offline.
Okay, so it's a collector's piece.
Basic.
It's collectors exchanging. Once in a while, somebody will steal some or use it illicitly.
Use it to buy human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or to try to extract money out of a hospital after shutting it down.
Yeah, well, that's fucked up. Not to say that the illegal stuff is okay, but
yeah, most of it is just rich people collecting it,
hoarding it, and congratulating each other on it.
Yeah, yep, and then being super excited about everything crypto and blockchain.
Yeah, it's the future. We're so cool
because blockchain. And then finally, there's climate. Bitcoin is incredibly energy intensive. Not just the mining, every system that runs a node is having to crunch numbers. And every kind of central node that is actually processing the transactions is having to do a lot of computation. That's why they charge fees, is they have to pay the power bill. Even if they're just writing it to the blockchain, they have to crunch a lot of numbers. And that is expensive. Bitcoin is estimated to have a total power consumption greater than the country of Argentina. And it has possibly at this point passed up Norway and Sweden.
Yeah, it's pretty effed up.
Yeah, if it were a country, it would be in the top 30 countries for power consumption.
Oh my God, that's so embarrassing.
It gets worse. So when the Bitcoin miners had to leave China, a lot of these Chinese companies either moved their operations to the US or sold their equipment to investors in the US that would take over the mining. For setting up these mining operations in the US, they've bought abandoned warehouses, abandoned factories, and abandoned coal power plants.
Because that makes sense.
Which they then convert to natural gas power plants, which is cleaner and cheaper than coal. Natural gas is completely better than coal for power. It's still not great, but it's way better than...
Not better than nothing.
Yeah. And in the process, so they're setting up these massive data centers inside of a power plant where they're getting all of the power from burning natural gas. In other words, they're mining Bitcoin with carbon.
Right. Which, if you have been paying attention to the past 40 years, is kind of like a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
You really should be getting away from that.
If there are also there's a major incentive to put them where power is cheap. So if you can get cheap natural gas and you have a facility that can handle the cooling, that's great. One of these particular power plants that has been converted is on Lake Syracuse in New York, and they're water cooling the entire, data center they're operating for the mining and sucking water out of the lake and returning it 40 or 50 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than it started.
How is New York allowing that to happen? That's an environmental disaster.
It really is. It's not uncommon for data centers to do that. For example, on the Columbia River, I believe it's Google's data center in Hood River in Oregon. It directly takes water out of the Columbia River to cool its servers.
Yeah, but it's returning
it 1 or 2 degrees warmer.
Yeah, there's a big difference there. Anyway.
That's a huge difference.
Not everybody cares about the environment.
Nope. And especially if you're... Yeah.
Especially if you're a born-again Christian who thinks that the world is going to end in 10 years.
Right.
2 years.
Or if you're just a greedy son of a bitch who doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. So there are cryptocurrency apologists who I have seen in forums and heard on podcasts that point out that no, this is just using excess, using excess renewable energy power and the off-peak power and using the flared natural gas.
Right, the stuff that normally gets burned off or thrown away.
Turns out
that's a lie.
Most of those are theoretical proposals to clean up Bitcoin, not what's actually happening. They could build data centers at oil fields and use the natural gas that is currently being flared or literally just burned to at least make Bitcoin out of it. Doing that would make it at least neutral as to how much carbon dioxide is going into the, like, they're not adding directly to carbon dioxide going to the atmosphere. They're not doing that because that'd require building the infrastructure completely from the ground up.
Yeah.
They're not doing that. They're buying buildings and retrofitting them as quickly as possible to extract as much money as possible. Building a building in the middle of nowhere, and how the hell are you going to cool it? Like, no, that's just not going to happen.
Great theory, but not really.
It's never going to happen. There has been talk about putting some in parts of Texas that have excess wind power. And then instead of breaking the windmills, breaking as in shutting down the windmills, you could actually just let them all run and use the power to mine Bitcoin. Except nobody's doing that. It's being talked about. It's a theoretical. It's not reality.
No, and it hasn't been reality for 10 years. So
what is reality, especially in Texas, is putting in Bitcoin operations where they're using the off-peak power, which means when peak load comes on, they shut down. But those extra natural gas power plants that are normally shut off are running 24/7 now.
Burning more natural gas.
Burning more natural gas, getting Bitcoin out of making carbon dioxide, out of turning methane into carbon dioxide.
What's funny is it's bad enough when you destroy the planet for money. It's even worse when you destroy the planet for theoretical money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just monopoly money.
Now, cryptocurrency evangelists would say that real, fiat currency is monopoly money. It's not real. It's not tied to anything. At least this is mathematically provable. You can buy a Tesla with it.
Yeah.
You can't buy food with it.
No. It's a luxury item.
Yeah.
Buy a boat with it, apparently.
I'm pretty sure he had...
You can't go down the grocery store and tap a card with Bitcoin on it and buy groceries.
No.
Or gas. Or housing.
Well, actually, you can now, with Stripe, have your paycheck direct deposited into a Bitcoin wallet that a bank they work with holds in their custody. So it's a custodial wallet, which means you don't have your keys, which means if they get breached, you lose everything.
Right.
And it's not insured by the government because it's real money.
Big difference there.
And they'll give you a debit card that you can use to make cash transactions with.
And pay the fees every time.
And there's fees everywhere with that. Yeah. There's no fee on turning your money into Bitcoin. There's fees on everything once it is.
Yeah.
And again, then you're taking your money from something that's not volatile and putting it into something that is.
Yeah.
Which would be, that's great when it's going up. It'd be pretty awesome to be able to pay your rent on the increase in value in Bitcoin when it doubles in value.
It's the same as stocks.
But when it drops, it's nothing.
Or gambling.
Bitcoin's not the same as stocks.
No, I mean, it's that.
But yeah, normal
money from nothing.
Normal people shouldn't be putting all their money into stocks either.
No.
That's only the super rich. Normal people are lucky to be able to put money into 401ks. So climate, yes, Bitcoin could be better for the climate. Let me phrase that. Bitcoin could be less horrible for the environment. It's not.
And it's not going to.
It's not going to because that's expensive.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is not about making a better world. It's about
making money.
Making virtual money. And the miners are a very small number of people who are incredibly greedy that are making a ridiculous amount of money off of it. They're not going to spend any of that money building the infrastructure to make it green.
Nope, not unless a government regulating force comes in and ruins everything for everybody.
Elon Musk got a lot of crap over that when Tesla bought a bunch of Bitcoin, enough that he went and talked to the heads of the big mining groups in the US and begged them to switch over to using renewable energy.
It doesn't do... It's off-brand for him to do something so blatantly environmentally damaging when his brand, Tesla in particular, was all about going green.
However, none of that is...
It just cracked his facade.
Realistically, though, that should have all been lost when he launched a Tesla at Mars.
Well, fuck. He's insane.
The amount of pollution from that rocket launch is insane. At least American-style rockets it's liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, not like the Russians that
it doesn't matter.
Are burning. Yeah. The Russians are burning diesel. They're going to space.
Of course they are. Jesus.
Yeah. Soviet
era rockets, probably.
No, it's their equivalent to the Apollo era rockets.
Yeah.
Soyuz have not changed since the 60s. But anyway, that's getting a little off topic for this discussion. The climate effects are horrible, and if we're trying to get off of carbon, yes, moving all Bitcoin to using renewable energies would be great. However, if Bitcoin uses up all of the new renewable energy, then we can't get rid of the old carbon-based energy sources.
Right. Going under renewable energy was under the pretense that some new energy-sucking monster wasn't going to appear out of nowhere, and it did.
Yeah.
So we're fucked.
Yep. The key criticism of Bitcoin on the climate, and I think this is really the most important, is if we continue with this, we have no chance of keeping temperatures below a 2-degree increase, 2 degrees Celsius increase. We barely have a chance without it, but with it, there's none. Bitcoin mining will use all of the available electricity, and you can't shut down plants until you can replace them, and you can't replace them if the demand keeps rising so fucking fast.
Yeah. Oh.
So yeah.
This episode brought to you by Buyer's Remorse.
No, I do not have buyer's remorse. This is something I have had a passing interest in for quite a few years. And it has been an interesting experience learning about how it works and trying things out, including running my own Bitcoin node briefly.
Very briefly.
Do I plan on keeping it? No. Am I going to sell it immediately? No. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. I know my interest in cryptocurrencies has gone from casual passing interest to active interest to now disdain. Whoops. That's not the right stinger. All right, so I guess that's the one we're doing this time for the feedback, and that's not appropriate for the feedback, but Diddy Pong it is. So, from Alan via the contact form, hey Dustin, about your talk about the time zones and natural rhythms, I was born in Machias, Maine, which is the furthest east you can go in the United States and still be in Eastern time zone. We lived there until I was about 3. I used to get up with the sun and wake up my parents. They didn't mind it in the winter as the sun was getting up when it was approximately 6 a.m. They hated it when daylight saving time was in effect, as the time the sun would come up would be a couple of hours earlier because of the tilt of the earth. Hope Lauren is doing better.
Yeah, as a parent of a 4-year-old, all kids do that.
Yeah.
They can't help it.
Dogs too.
Dogs too.
We have 2 dogs and a 4-year-old, and
really no need for alarm.
Except for in the winter.
Nice break.
When the sun starts rising before my alarm goes off, it takes some time to train them, a couple weeks to train them to just let me sleep. Because I will not feed them until my alarm goes off. But like I remember when with how bad it is here with being, literally in the wrong time zone. When I was a little kid, I lived on the family farm outside of Vail, Oregon, about 50, 60 miles west of Boise, in Mountain Time Zone. So even further in the wrong time zone. The sun didn't set until 10 o'clock in the summer. Like literally 10 o'clock in the summer. And at harvest on the farm, my cousins would leave Baker City an hour by car away and drive over the back roads in the tractors and show up about the time I was supposed to go to bed and work the field, help out Grandpa in the field, as long as there was any light. And any light was till frickin' 11 o'clock.
Right.
It was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. Now, that would make sense if you're in Alaska or if you're in northern Canada. That doesn't make sense when you're below the 45th parallel. We are closer to the equator than we are to the North Pole. So, anyway, that's it for this week. Lauren, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
If you want to find the sources, you can find them in the show notes at htotw.com/5. Not everything I said was from those sources. Some of it is information that I have gleaned over the last several months on the topic. If you want to contact us, you can use the feedback form at htotw.com/contact. You can email us at contact@htotw.com. If you want to go super short, you can just do c@htotw.com. If you want to type less.
There you go.
You can leave us
you
can leave us a voice message at 208-996-8667 or use the SpeakPipe button on the website. You can support us on a monthly basis with Patreon or just once with PayPal, credit card, debit card, Apple Pay, or Google Pay. And all the links can be found at htotw.com/donate. Till next week, remember, not all those who wander are lost.